DeVonta Smith leading the Philadelphia Eagles in receiving in 2025 is one of just many stat predictions I have coming up right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Eagles fans, welcome into this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner, just 8 days away. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. 1 week away from Philadelphia Eagles football is tomorrow. 7 days from tomorrow separates us from week one, Eagles Cowboys next Thursday night. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on TikTok. Check out our YouTube shorts. We are posting 5 episodes a week, Monday through Friday, my solo shows. We have 2 live squad shows for you as well that go for an hour long, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We also have our postcast after the games on Sundays, my recap show as well. You're not going to find an Eagles platform with more content during the season than Locked On Eagles. So again, go subscribe on all platforms. The 2025 season, 8 days away. So on today's edition of the show, I thought it's time to predict some stats for the Philadelphia Eagles. As we do every year, a week before the season, I have stat predictions for the offensive and defensive side of the football. And the one that I'm leading with on offense, and I think this might be the boldest one for the offensive side of the football, I think DeVonta Smith is going to lead the Philadelphia Eagles in receiving this year. Now, what do I mean when I say receiving? Because there's a lot of different receiving stats. Am I talking receptions? Am I talking receiving yards? Am I talking receiving touchdowns? For me, specifically, I'm focusing on receptions and yards. I think DeVonta Smith, not A.J. Brown, not Dallas Goedert, DeVonta is going to lead the Eagles in 2025 in both receptions and yardage. Now, odds makers would definitely put this in the plus category. I think A.J. Brown would be the favorite as he's a top 3 receiver in the NFL. But for me, I look at Smitty and why I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. Look, I know last year statistically was Smith's worst season, but I actually think last year was where he looked like the most complete version of himself as a football player, with the way he can win in so many different areas of the football field. Last year, you saw him more as a technician over the middle of the field as a slot receiver. Kellen Moore liked to use him more inside. I mean, some of the deep ball receptions that he had in the regular season, in the playoffs, the clutch gene was yet again on display. Injuries and him being rested the final game of the season held those numbers back. But if you look at the film, if you look at the yardage, the statistical pace he was on, it was going to be right on par with what he did in 2021, 2022, 2023. And he was doing all of that in a run-first offense. So, statistically, last year didn't look great for Smitty. It looked like a pretty solid wide receiver 2 season. But again, he missed a couple games for injuries. He was rested week 14, or I should say week 18, sorry. Week 18, he did not play. And he was in the offense that threw the ball less than anybody in the NFL, and he's behind A.J. Brown. So none of it really was performative, why Smitty's numbers were lower last year. I think he's going to bounce back in 2025, get back to the numbers he was at in 2022 and in 2023. And if he gets back to that player, statistically speaking, and he is the player he was when he was on the field last year producing, which was a very complete receiver, I don't think it's crazy to say, if healthy, he can outproduce A.J. Brown. If you look at A.J. Brown, he also got banged up last year. He's nursing currently a hamstring injury. Smitty did lead the Eagles in receptions in 2022. He had over 90 catches that year. So it's not like this is something he's never done before, even with A.J. Brown in this offense. I also do think he's going to continue to play slot receiver. I think he's going to play in the slot more than A.J. Brown. Now, those guys are interchangeable. They can move across the formation. They'll play all over the line of scrimmage, but I do think Smith is someone that projects more inside than A.J. Brown. Both can win inside, but Smitty did it more in 2024. And playing in the slot gives you more opportunities for quick, easy receptions over the middle of the field. I do think the Eagles are going to pass more this year. And he can win in so many different ways. The deep ball, he can win inside, he can win outside, run after the catch ability, quick passes. I don't think it's all that crazy to say that DeVonta's going to have a career year, and I think he's going to outproduce A.J. Brown in 2025. So there's my bold stat prediction for the offensive side of the football. One that might seem bold, but I really don't think is all that crazy. I think Jalen Hurts is getting to 4,000 passing yards in 2025. Now, last year he didn't even have 3,000, so people are going to think I'm crazy for projecting an 1,100-yard jump for Jalen Hurts. But when you look at his career, since A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith have been in this offense together, so the last 3 seasons, his passing yardage just past year was so low, 193 yards a game. Saquon Barkley had a historic usage rate, but I'm not projecting that happens again. If he gets back to the volume he had in 2022, 2023, or maybe even a little bit less, but there's a middle ground between that average and last year's average. Last year, again, averaging 193 yards a game. In 2022, it was 246. In 2023, it was 226. If there's a middle ground there, if he gets back to kind of the median of that, which was 2023, let's say he averages 226, he gets back to that consistency, plus a couple like really big passing performances, which I think he can do, and he doesn't miss 3+ games like he did last year. It feels like a lot of ifs, but Jalen Hurts, to me, if he plays 15+ games, if he's averaging over 200 yards a game passing, which he's done 2 of the last 3 years, and he has a couple monster games where he's the guy leading the way on offense, not Saquon, I don't think it's all that crazy. I mean, he had 3,700 yards, 3,800 yards in back-to-back years in 22 and 23. He almost broke 4,000 yards in 2023 when he was averaging 226 passing yards, not 246. He was on that pace, and then, of course, we know about the collapse down the stretch. I think he can get back to that mark, and I don't think it would be all that crazy to say that Jalen gets to 4K this year. And that doesn't mean I'm projecting Saquon to have this massive decline, but Jalen Hurts has only been, in 2 of the last 3 years, 200 to 300 yards shy of that mark, and he would have reached it likely both times if it wasn't for injuries. So if Jalen stays healthy this year and they don't throw it the 32nd fewest times, which was dead last in the NFL, obviously, 32 of 32 teams, they were 32nd in passing attempts last year. If they're not the most run-happy team in football, maybe they're still top 5, but they're not number 1, and Jalen has a couple mega games, I think it's going to happen. I think you're going to see Jalen in 4K in 2025. And then my other prediction for the offense, statistically speaking, Jahan Dotson, I think from a stat projection perspective, that's a tongue twister, Jahan Dotson is going to outproduce Dallas Goedert. So a lot of this is based on Dallas Goedert just cannot stay healthy, but I'm also projecting Dotson to be a much bigger piece of the puzzle on offense this year than other people are projecting. Now, I think most people know and believe he's going to be better than who he was last year. Like, he's going to have more than 200 receiving yards, and I don't think it's going to go a month on end where this guy doesn't see a reception. Like, last year, there were times where it went 3-4 games. Dotson hasn't touched the football. I think he's going to be much more involved than that, but I'm going to take it a step further. I think he's going to be as involved as Dallas Goedert. And Dallas Goedert, again, he cannot stay healthy. I think Dotson is going to be like the 3A, 3B with Goedert in this passing attack. I know that's a little bold, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, Dotson is a first-round talent that's coming off a year where he built chemistry down the stretch with Jalen Hurts in the playoffs. He had a really strong summer. Goddard's injury history. I think Dotson is going to be a bigger part. Again, not just bigger than last year, comparatively speaking. I think he's going to be just as big of a part of this offense in the passing game as Dallas Goedert. So that's another, I would say, bolder prediction for offense. But I think Dotson is going to outproduce Dallas Goedert in 2025. Career year for both players. I think Dallas Goedert's going to have a really big year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dotson has one too. All right, guys, 3 stat predictions, I should say, for the Eagles defense coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy Football. The NFL season is right around the corner. You can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran, creating your millionth league. With season kickoff on September 4th, now is the time to start playing on Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. You've got guillotine leagues, straight head-to-heads. You can join a private league if you'd like with your friends. I've been doing a private league with my boys for 16 years now, since 2009. You can also join public leagues as well. So many ways to play. The NFL season kicks off again next Thursday, September 4th, Eagles-Cowboys. Don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Eagles fans, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you, the listener. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like about the show, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to compete for one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for helping us out. Predicting some stats for the Eagles 2025 season on offense. I think DeVonta Smith is going to lead the team in both receptions and receiving yards over A.J. Brown. I think Jalen Hurts is going to surpass 4,000 passing yards. I think Jahan Dotson is going to outproduce Dallas Goedert statistically. So those are my three predictions on the offensive side of the football. Maybe all pretty bold, I would say. I don't think FanDuel would make any of those bets the favorite. I think those would all be in the plus category. But I think all three could happen. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think Dotson's going to be a really big part of this offense, bigger than other people believe. I think if Hurts gets back to his 2022, 2023 passing average with a couple really big games, if he can stay healthy, I think he's got a shot of getting to 4,000, passing yards. And for DeVonta Smith, he's had more receptions than A.J. Brown in a season before. And I wouldn't be surprised if he stays healthy, if he has like a monster career year. I think Smitty last year, again, the statistics, it was his lowest year. It was his lowest output of his career in Philly. But I actually think like that was the most complete version of Smitty that we've gotten since 2021. Three predictions for the defensive side of the football in the stat box score. I think on the defensive line, both Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith are going to get at least 10 sacks. Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, they already were the alphas of the defensive line last year. But this is the first year there's they're the veterans now. Last year, they were the go-tos down the stretch in the playoffs. I mean, they were the ones getting to the quarterback consistently. But you still had Josh Sweat. You had Brandon Graham in the Super Bowl. You had Milton Williams. You had guys that have been there and done that have been elite pass rushers in their own right, that have helped the Eagles get to other Super Bowls. Before that, of course, you had Fletcher Cox and a healthy BG. Hassan Reddick was in-house in 2023. Sweat was there. Milton Williams on the inside. A lot of veterans at defensive tackle. Now, the seasoned vets on the defensive line, it's Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and it's Jordan Davis. Your other guys are Moro Ajoma and Jalix Hunt as starters, and they're new starters on the defensive side of the football. So for me, these are the guys that have to get to the quarterback. And I think Nolan Smith, if he's the player you got after the bye week last year and into the playoffs, he's going to get 10 sacks. After the bye, if you combine the postseason, he had double-digit sacks. He set a franchise record for the playoffs with 4.5 sacks in the postseason, which again was a single postseason record in Eagles history. He had 6 sacks as well in the regular season, so he had over 10 on the year total, combining the regular season and the playoffs, and that was with a slower first month of the year. I don't think he's going to have that slow first month again, although we'll see if he's fully healthy next Thursday night. But I think Nolan and Jalen, they're your go-tos. I think both Carter and Smith are going to get to double-digit sacks. And then on the defensive side of the football in the secondary, I think Quinyon Mitchell, I think he's going to have at least 5 interceptions. I think Quinyon Mitchell has a really good chance to lead the NFL in interceptions, and I know he had 0 in the regular season last year, so it seems like a massive jump. But when you look at the plays he was able to make on the football, how he was atop the league all year long in forced incompletions and pass deflections, he should have had at least 3 interceptions. There was a scenario that could have played out last year where Quinyon, as a rookie, led the NFL in interceptions. Like, there were 6 to 7 plays where you would say he probably should have had a pick there. And so at least if a couple of them went his way, he's at, 2 to 4. If he finishes on 6 to 7 plays that he made, that he put himself in position to get to the football, then Quinyon last year leads the NFL in picks. Like, he's the one with 6 picks, not CJ Gardner-Johnson. And the issue was, again, Quinyon's so good at putting himself in a position to make plays on the football, crashing downhill. He's so good at mirroring routes, off coverage, man, zone, press, you name it. Like, Q knows how to get to the football. Like, his playmaking experience and ability is why they drafted him in the first round, but he wasn't able to catch the ball. But in the playoffs, he did. He had an interception in the wild card round against Green Bay. He had an interception in the NFC Championship against Washington. He started to finish those plays. He started to capitalize and close. In the offseason, he talked about in his press conference like a month ago how much emphasis they were putting on Quinyon, his receiving ability, like finishing the play, working on his hands. So we know he's an elite playmaker. We know he's always in the right position. If he does what he did in the playoffs, if he carries that momentum into the regular season, I don't know how this guy doesn't have at least 4 picks. I'm going to go farther and say he's got 5+ in 2025. Again, there's a scenario that could have played out last year where that guy had 6 to 7. He was in position to make that many picks, and he didn't catch a single one of them. So this year, I would imagine he makes a good amount of plays, a similar amount of plays, and this time he's got to catch some of them. And I think he'll make more plays than he did last year on the football. So I'm projecting at least 5 interceptions for Quinyon Mitchell, and he's going to lead the defense. And then at linebacker, got a stat prediction for all 3 levels. The defensive line, again, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, both going to get 10+ sacks this year. Quinyon Mitchell in the secondary is going to have at least 5 interceptions. And then at linebacker, Jahad Campbell. So on offense, I had Jahan Dotson outproducing Dallas Goedert. On defense, Jahad Campbell is going to outproduce Zach Bond. Now, what do I mean by that? So when you look at like the splash impact statistics, the playmaking statistics. So for linebacker, I would include interceptions, sacks, and forced fumbles. Those are the 3 areas where a linebacker, like again, the sexy stats, like that's where they become an all-pro player. Because Zach Bond last year had over 3 sacks. He had over 3 interceptions. He was atop the league in forced fumbles at linebacker. Like, those are the numbers that made Zach Bond a first-team All-Pro. I think Campbell is going to outproduce Zach Bond this year when it comes to the combined stats of sacks, I should say, interceptions, and forced fumbles. The playmaking stats, I think Campbell, again, we know he's going to be a great pass rusher. That was his bread and butter at Alabama. He had a sack on the first play of the game against Cleveland in the second week of the preseason. He should have had an interception in that first game against Cincinnati. Forced fumbles, like, he's an aggressive hard hitter. They had to almost scale him back, like hold him back a little bit in practice in August because he was trying to take guys' heads off. I think Jahad Campbell is going to be a Rookie of the Year finalist this year. And I'm not projecting a regression for Zach Bond in 2025, but I think he'll take a little bit of a step back, right? I don't project he's going to be a back-to-back first-team All-Pro linebacker. So if he comes down a little bit, and Jahad Campbell in his first year is a Rookie of the Year finalist like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were last year, I think that could result in Campbell outproducing Bond in those categories, because I think Campbell playing off Zach Bond is going to allow him to be more of a playmaker, to play just more instinctually off the football, to crash downhill. So I think Campbell, with sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles combined, he will outproduce Zach Bond. Total of those 3 stats, he will outproduce Zach Bond in 2025. Let me know what you think of these stat projections. Hit us up on X at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase LOE. We'll wrap up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, Howie Roseman still busy improving the 53-man roster today. We'll update you with what he did coming up right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, you can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action is unfolding. I got my guys texting me all the time, like, get in on this. Let's go money line with this team. Fade this pick. So much to do. So many exciting ways to bet. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. Plus, you can bet futures on the NFL. So many ways to bet. The NFL season kicks off this Thursday, next Thursday. Eagles, Cowboys. Get involved. Get ready to play. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so Howie Roseman still busy at work today, improving the 53-man roster. Yesterday, he had to get down to the initial 53 at 4 p.m., but he did tinker with the roster a little bit today, so let's get into what those moves were. Overall, nothing like too crazy, but I think there were some hints of what moves could also be coming in the future. At wide receiver, Anais Smith, he did sign to the Carolina Panthers practice squad, so the Eagles no longer have their day 3 pick from 2024. I was kind of hoping he would be on the practice squad still. I think he did make some improvements this summer, but overall not enough to make the 53. With Anais Smith now not being an option for the practice squad, I know they kept Terrace Marshall Jr. on the practice squad, but I would like to add another receiver. I would like to carry a 6th guy on the 53, like I said on yesterday's show. A KJ Hamler that's out there, a Mecole Hardman, DeAndre Carter, Malachi Corley did sign today with the Cleveland Browns, so he's not available anymore, but I would like to bring in one of those guys. Who do you cut, though? I wouldn't want to cut anybody, really, on either side of the trenches, the offensive or defensive line. Today, they did waive safety Tristan McCollum, so they're light at safety now. They only have 3 traditional safeties, and then if you want to throw Cooper DeJean in that mix, they have 4 guys that can play safety. They also cut guard Trevor Keegan, who I was happy made the roster yesterday. He'll probably, hopefully, end up on the practice squad still, but they got rid of Keegan and McCollum, so they're a little bit lighter on the offensive line in safety. They brought in they're lighter at guard. They brought in a center today, Willie Lampkin, who they claimed on waivers from the Rams, and they also re-signed their long snapper, Charlie Hewlett. So they're still carrying 10 offensive linemen, but only 3 safeties. So who do they cut to add that 6th receiver? I don't know if that happens, to be honest. I don't think they're going to do that, but I would like to find a way to get one of those receivers I mentioned on the practice squad because Terrace Marshall does not really provide much special teams ability as a gunner, as a returner. Like, he's not one of those guys, so maybe don't add a 6th receiver to the 53, but I would like to bring in one of those guys onto the practice squad if possible. Willie Lampkin, though, is such an Eagles center. 5'11", athletic, can get up to the 2nd and 3rd level. Again, I'm not going to compare him with Jason Kelsey, but like you can see, like that's the kind of athletic lineman that Jeff Stoutland likes. And Fran Duffy, who I really respect his draft opinions, this was a Fran Duffy my guy. So Willie Lampkin, again, a smaller, undersized center, but a lot of teams liked him, and the Eagles were able to claim him off waivers from the Los Angeles Rams. So Lampkin now with Drew Kendall as 2 backup centers. So Trevor Keegan out at guard, probably will be stashed in the practice squad, I would imagine. So those are your moves for today. Anais Smith out with Carolina now in the practice squad. The Eagles cut Trevor Keegan and Tristan McCollum. I'd imagine they want both back on the practice squad. Maybe there's another move to be made, though, at safety. I don't know. If it's Justin Simmons, if it's a trade, maybe that's coming. But McCollum, I was pretty surprised he was waived today because Vic Fangio has spoken highly of him in the past, including this year. Like, he mentioned him as part of that starting safety competition. And last year, McCollum was playing over Sidney Brown as that 3rd safety behind C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship. It wasn't Sid as the 3rd guy. It was Tristan McCollum. So I imagine they want to get him back into the fold and Keegan, but we'll see what happens. I thought Anais Smith would come back, and now he's in Carolina. So they're still at 53 players. Again, they just switched out Keegan and McCollum for Charlie Hewlett and Willie Lampkin. Maybe they add a 6th receiver. I doubt it. I think if they're going to do anything, it's probably going to be adding another DB, like adding a safety with only 3 on the roster right now. Maybe adding a corner, though. They tried to add a corner today. Mike Garafolo reports that new Titans corner, Jalen Armour-Davis, who I did like coming out of college, he was a popular guy in waivers. The Eagles, Saints, and Dolphins all put in claims for the former Ravens DB, but Tennessee had the number 1 priority. We know the Eagles were at the bottom, 32nd on waivers. But they did put a claim in for a corner, so they're trying to improve the secondary already. So I imagine this week they'll add a safety or corner. If they do that, who's on the cuts? I'd probably say it's an offensive or defensive lineman because they're carrying so many. Or it's maybe another corner. Maybe it's Mac McWilliams. But I like Mac. I thought he had a good summer. I would say like Brett Toth would be my vote to get rid of. Because, again, I think you could get one of those guys, Toth, Keegan. You got Holland Pierce on the practice squad. I think you're okay with your offensive lineman right now. That'd be my vote, but we'll see what happens. I definitely think that Howie has some moves up his sleeve. I don't know if there's going to be a significant move coming. I think eventually they will look to add an edge, safety, or corner, but I do think they want to give it a little bit. Like, they want to probably see what Azeez Ojulari has, Josh Uche, Drew Makuba, Sidney Brown. Like, yeah, they might bring in a Jalen Armour-Davis caliber of player for depth, but if there's going to be like a significant move at one of these 3 spots, I would predict it's closer to the trade deadline this year than it would be like before week 1, before next Thursday against Dallas. I really do think they want to see what they've got in those guys, because if they pan out, then they're not going to add anybody. So those are depth players that do have ability that the Eagles were kind of banking on this offseason. None of them did enough to lose that standing. But we'll see. That first month of the year is going to be important for those guys. I'm not projecting any big move like 2022 trading for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson right before the season starts. But those would be the 3 spots I project something happens eventually, if something does. Corner, safety, edge. But I don't think it'll happen now. I think it's closer to like the month of October, closer to the trade deadline. Let's see what those other role players have, and then we'll go from there. But right now, Eagles still set at 53, and I'm sure they'll continue to tinker with it from a depth perspective. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast as we get you ready for your fantasy season all day, every day. As always, thank you so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.